There is a performance you give every single day, and the exhaustion of it is killing you slowly. You wake up and pretend that the things you are doing matter. You go to work and pretend the outcomes are significant. You set goals and pretend that achieving them will fill the hole that achieving the last ones did not fill. And somewhere beneath the performance, in a place you do not visit, because visiting it feels like drowning, you know that none of it means anything, that the universe will not notice whether you succeed or fail, that your entire life from birth to death is a flicker so brief that calling it insignificant would be giving it too much credit. You know this, and you keep performing anyway, because the alternative, stopping the performance and facing what waits beneath it, feels like a death you are not ready to die. You have achieved things that were supposed to make you feel complete, and the completion lasted approximately 45 minutes. The degree, the job, the relationship, the milestone that was going to finally prove you were enough. You reached it. You held it in your hands. And then the question came, the one that arrives after every achievement, the one you have never been able to answer. So what? You have spent your entire life running toward finish lines, and every time you cross one, you discover it was painted on the ground by someone who kept walking. The satisfaction is not there. It was never there, and you are beginning to suspect that it is not ahead of you either, that the hunger is not a problem to be solved, but a feature of a machine designed to keep you running until you collapse. And still you run, because stopping would mean admitting that all the running was for nothing. Something cracked in you recently, and you have been pretending it did not happen. Maybe it was a death, someone you knew, someone your age, someone whose plans for the future became suddenly irrelevant. Maybe it was a moment of stillness when the noise stopped long enough for the silence to say something you did not want to hear. Maybe it was just exhaustion, the cumulative weight of decades spent building a life that looks meaningful from the outside and feels like set decoration from the inside. The crack showed you something. It showed you that the meaning you have been living inside was a story you were telling yourself. And stories can end. They can be interrupted mid-sentence and never finished. And the universe will not pause to mourn the interruption. It will not even notice. That is what the crack showed you. And now you are walking around with that knowledge, functioning, performing, while something fundamental has shifted beneath your feet. Nietzsche understood that most people cannot survive this knowledge. They touch it and recoil. They build elaborate systems to keep it at bay. Religions, philosophies, ambitions, distractions dense enough to fill every moment with noise. And these systems work in the sense that they prevent the confrontation. But they work by keeping you asleep. They work by ensuring you never face the void directly, which also means you never discover what lies on the other side of facing it. Because there is another side. There is a way to absorb meaninglessness completely, to let it destroy every illusion you have been clinging to, and to emerge not into despair, but into something lighter than you have ever felt. This is absurdism, not the denial of the void, the embrace of it. The problem with borrowed meaning is that it can be repossessed. If your sense of purpose comes from your career, unemployment becomes existential crisis. If it comes from relationships, abandonment becomes annihilation. If it comes from achievement, the inevitable plateau becomes proof that you were never enough. Borrowed meaning keeps you dependent on circumstances you cannot control, and circumstances are unstable by nature. You are building your psychological house on sand and wondering why you never feel secure. The absurdist builds differently. They build on the recognition that no foundation is permanent, and that impermanence is not a flaw to be solved, but the condition that makes building meaningful at all. Consider what you are actually afraid of when you avoid the meaninglessness. You are afraid that without cosmic significance, nothing is worth doing. That without an audience in the sky validating your choices become arbitrary. That without a finish line that matters eternally, the race is pointless. But examine these fears. Do you need the universe to care about your breakfast for your breakfast to taste good? Do you need eternity to validate your friendship for your friendship to bring you joy? Do you need a divine scoreboard to make your efforts worthwhile? Or is the effort itself, the engagement, the challenge, the momentary victory over entropy, worth something in its own right? The fears assume that meaning must come from outside to be real, but you have never experienced external meaning. Every meaning you have ever felt was felt internally. The external was always a story you told to justify the internal. The internal was always the only place meaning lived. Nietzsche proposed something radical, that the death of external meaning is not the end of meaning, but the beginning of freedom. When no cosmic authority tells you what your life is for, you get to decide. When no eternal script determines your values, you become the author. When no God judges your choices, you bear full responsibility, which sounds heavy until you realize that full responsibility is the same thing as full power. You are not condemned to meaninglessness. You are liberated into creation. The canvas is blank. That is not a tragedy. That is an invitation. The absurdist lives differently than the believer and differently than the nihilist. The believer lives as though meaning is real and externally guaranteed. The nihilist lives as though meaning is impossible and nothing matters. The absurdist lives in the gap, knowing that meaning is not guaranteed, choosing to create it anyway, holding the creation loosely because they know it is a construction, and finding joy precisely in the construction. This is not self-deception. The absurdist knows the game is invented. They play anyway, not because they are fooled, but because playing is better than not playing, and better does not require cosmic certification. The happiness available on the other side of this confrontation is unlike any happiness you have experienced. It does not depend on circumstances. It does not require outcomes. It is not the fragile happiness of things going your way. It is the robust happiness of no longer needing things to go your way. When you have faced the worst truth that nothing matters and found that you can still laugh, still create, still love, still get out of bed with something like enthusiasm, you have become unkillable in the only way that matters. Not physically unkillable, psychologically, spiritually. The void has done its worst and you are still here. What can circumstances do to you now? This is what Nietzsche found on the other side of the abyss. Not faith, he had destroyed that too thoroughly. Not hope in the conventional sense. Hope for what? That the universe would suddenly start caring? No. What he found was lighter. A cosmic joke that becomes funny once you are in on it. An absurdity that stops being terrifying when you stop demanding that it makes sense. A freedom that only exists when you stop asking for permission. You have been waiting for meaning to be revealed. It will not be. You have been waiting for purpose to become clear. It will not. You have been waiting for the universe to tell you why you are here. And the universe does not speak, but you speak, and that is enough.